Hey there folks, I'm Mark in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. You know, when I reviewed Jesus is King over a week ago on my main channel, I had this naive hope that maybe the general public would just be apathetic to it and it wouldn't chart at all. Or if it did, it would be patchy and marginal, mostly around the bottom half of the Hot 100. An album bomb, but one that could be managed. Instead, over half the album landed in the top 40. So even when album bomb rules are applied, I still have a sizable week to mostly talk about a project that I have an aggressive non-interest in. Goddamn wonderful. And while I could very easily find 7 related Bible passages to make my point again and call it a day, well, we'll have to see. Now, of course, in my opinion, the more important story comes in our top 10 with a new number 1 that I did not see coming at all and is a first for this artist altogether, Lose You to Love Me by Selena Gomez at number 1. And its success in multiple categories, it's more than a little bit astonishing. Dominance in sales, a huge surge on streaming and YouTube, and radio traction to boot. Now, granted, it only surged this hard because, as I mentioned last week, the number 1 position is kind of weak right now, so it'll be a question of maintaining momentum to keep that spot, but the fact that Selena Gomez actually got there, yeah, you know what? Colored me surprised. It took her damn near a decade, even if I'm kind of lukewarm on the song. Congrats! I'd certainly prefer her to Louis Capaldi and Someone You Love pushed back to number 2. As its sales discount faded, the streaming sputtered and radio slipped into outright freefall, which is good news for Circles by Post Malone up to number 3, which has maintained its radio growth, albeit slowly, and still has pretty decent sales and streaming. Now this takes us to Señorita by Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello at number 4. Where it might be slipping in all categories, but still has just enough radio to hold its own, which is also basically the same case for Truth Hurts by Lizzo falling past it to number 5, which still maintains good sales, but utterly collapsed on streaming this week. Now, fortunately for her, she does have Good As Hell breaking into the top 10 at number 6, which has even better sales, slightly better streaming, and really robust radio traction, likely buoyed on by a remix with Ariana Grande, which I don't really mind in the slightest, but a song this brassy does show how much Ariana can be overshadowed when she underplays without strong production to support her. Unfortunately, we got another new arrival at number 7, Follow God from Kanye West, which I will talk about later, but given that it's one of the few Jesus is King songs that actually sold units to match its huge streaming, I'm not really surprised it's here. I'll be more surprised if it actually lasts. Hell, it blew right past No Guidance by Chris Brown featuring Drake at number 8, but considering how much it lost across the board, that isn't exactly surprising. It's also sadly the case for Panini by Lil Nas X as well, especially as its radio seems to have stalled out to leave it at number 9. Finally, somehow holding up in the top 10 at the very bottom, we've got Bad Guy by Billie Eilish sticking around. Most because even as it loses, it still has just enough traction in all channels to hold up, albeit barely. And on that comforting note, our losers and dropouts, and as to be expected on an album bomb week, there were a lot of them, especially when we consider our big dropouts. Yeah, Caleta by Bad Bunny and Taney, and Otro Trego by Second Darrell, they were crippled early, and Boyfriend by Ariana Grande and Social House flopped early anyway. But when you consider that The Get Up by Blanco Brown, Wow by Post Malone, and Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee, the last of which damn near lasted the whole Billboard year, that they're now gone, that says a lot. But in the tradition of disruptive album bomb weeks, a full quarter of the Hot 100 were losers here, so let's rattle through them in by genre. In pop, we saw Higher Love by Kygo and Late Whitney Houston slip down to 99, Lights Up by Harry Styles flicker at 95, You Need to Calm Down and Lover by Taylor Swift slide down to 52 and 48 respectively, and One Thing Right by Kane Brown and Marshmello at 47. And on the topic of songs that barely passed for country, Prayed For You by Matt Stell slid down to 56, Good Vibes by Chris Jansen went to 62, and I Don't Know About You by Chris Lane went down to 79, along with some actual country losses with Living by Dierks Bentley at 96, and Love You Too Late by Cole Swindell crashing hard off the radio losses at 74. Then we had a lot of losses in trap, particularly for Young Boy Never Broke Again with Lonely Child Volatile down at 64, Make No Sense at 70, Self-Control continuing down to 76, and Hot Now at 91, with Camelot by NLE Choppa falling down to 55, 223s by YNW Melly and 9 Glock 9 at 61, and FM by Lil TJ at 77. Then we had DaBaby having a uniquely bad week, with Suge stumbling down to 39, Vibes at 67, Bop at 71, Intro down to 90, and Cash It with Megan Thee Stallion at 80. And as for whatever's left, My Type by Saweetie hit 53, China by Annual AA, Daddy Yankee, Karol G, Ozuna, and J Baldwin at 84, and Come Through by Summer Walker and Usher at 89. Frankly, I'm surprised it held on that long. And in this sort of week, you really don't expect much in the way of gains or returns, but we actually got a few of the latter, with the expected Halloween return for Thriller by Michael Jackson at 44, and a promising bounce back for Slow Dancing in the Dark by Joji at 88, its highest position yet. And yet the only gain we got is the best message of hope yet. Dance Monkey by Tones and I up to 41. I mean, the faster it gets to the top of the charts, the better. And on a similar good note, since album bomb rules, they are in effect, here are the Kanye West songs I don't have to talk about. Jesus is Lord at 63, Hands On with Fred Hammond at 60, Water with Aunt Clemons at 51, and Every Hour with the Sunday Service Choir at 45. But I know what you're all here for. But before we get to the album bomb proper with our new arrivals, we're actually starting off with number 93, What She Wants Tonight by Luke Bryan.
Tell me what she wants tonight.
Hey look everyone, it looks like Luke Bryan is starting the build-up for another album for which I will have some fragment of expectations because he's got a good voice and a couple good songs, and yet wind up disappointing because underwhelming songwriting, poorly chosen minor key progressions, and bad production. And yeah, that is exactly what this is. And let's start off with the production here. Why are there so many filmy synths tacked on that don't blend with anything, and yet somehow clip into Luke Bryan's vocals? Why are the cymbals saturating the mix over that promising groove on the verse, leaving the guitar struggling for air on the hook? And you know what? Even if you are so head over heels for this femme fatale that doesn't take no for an answer, why are you okay with her cutting tires when she comes over? I mean, it seems reckless to me. And this song does not have the groove or command of atmosphere in order to make that believable or enticing. In other words, while I can see the Luke Bryan fan base falling head over heels for this one, once again, he is not living up to any sense of his potential, which in other words is a damn shame because it's not that good. Number 75, Start With Me by Roddy Ricch featuring Gunna.
33 Scotty Pippen, bitch, nigga ain't heard of me, I got it rich.
You know, Roddy Ricch, if you wanted to convince me you got a little bit more potential in this field, maybe the best way to do it is not work with Gunna, who remains as frustratingly tedious as always. Now, granted, there's not much here to praise even if he wasn't there, shooting people and brand name flexing with a borderline Young Thug impression over an overweight bass beat and flute warble where he compares his car's paint to Mike and Ike's. I mean, it's candy paint, but it doesn't have to be that literal. But at least he's not Gunna, who is name-dropping Andrew Jackson for the 20s that he gives his family. In other words, another week, another utterly flavorless trap song. We've been here before. Next. Number 37, Use This Gospel by Kanye West featuring Clipse and Kenny G.
Heaven, we call on your blessings.
I mean, the obvious parable that comes to mind, especially with the interplay between No Malice and Pusha-T, it's the prodigal son from the Gospel of Luke. But I'll also admit it's one of the few moments on this misbegotten album that comes close to working, and that's because Kanye West's personal drama is not given any focus, instead juxtaposing the harsh reality of Pusha T's sins with No Malice trying, and mostly failing, to provide comfort in the face of lost faith. I mean, it doesn't excuse the ugly car door beep that passes for a melody and all the gargled autotune, a lot of sloppy vocal tracking which has been fixed multiple times and still doesn't sound all that good, and the fact that each member of Clipse only got 8 bars. But hey, Kenny G sax solo, that sounds like the only decently tracked instrument on the entire album. I mean it counts for something, right? Number 36, God Is by Kanye West.
Praise the Lord. Worship Christ with the best of your portions.
Okay, pitched up James Cleveland sample, but not quite chipmunk. This has got potential. And then Kanye tries to sing, and he sounds outright dreadful. I mean, by the nine hells, dude, you release updated versions of your album seemingly every other week. You couldn't have sung this without the strep throat here? And am I the only one who's kind of skeeved out about how he's trying to highlight his Sunday service success and say that it's not about a dead religion? I mean, I might have skipped over talking about Hands On because, wow, it is dreadful. There is worse here that's charting the top 40, but it's got the same sentiment of rejection of the Christian religion that might be a little bit more skeptical of him in favor of this warped prosperity gospel that made him sane that's here. I don't know, maybe he's operating under the principle that if he sounds this bad on record on purpose, I'll believe it's genuine, but, well, we'll get to it. Still sounds really rough though. Not good. Number 33, Everything We Need by Kanye West featuring Dolla and Clemons.
We have everything we need.
So yes, Dolla and Clemons, they sound good on the hook. It's a nice harmony. Until the dirt cheap trap click comes in and Kanye says this person can spoil themselves. And then you realize that so much of this album is clearly using the leftover drafts of Yandhi that's cheaply recontextualized for Christianity, which kinda undercuts the whole vibe. Now granted, the what if Eve made apple juice line kinda does that already, but I will say this, at least falls into the underweight complacency, the least effective or interesting part of most Christian music. Next, number 27, Look at Her Now by Selena Gomez. So look, I had the hope that with the new Selena Gomez song we would have an obvious standout here. Even though I didn't really care for her first new single, it would be better than the vast majority of what we got. Sadly, despite okay verses off the clipping waves of synth, the hook absolutely sucks. Utterly flat, synthesized humming that sounds that has no punch and actively seems to clip the top of the mix. If this is a song that's trying to be an anthemic moment coming post-breakup, finally secure in where she's going and who she can love, why does it have the limp, blubbery vibe of a forgotten slice of late 80s R&B married to Kiara's Gold? In other words, not only is this considerably worse than the first single that Selena pushed, it also winds up being bad enough to not save this week. More's a pity. Number 23, On God by Kanye West.
Set the measure, Lord and Savior, I replied.
And back to Kanye, and the song where I actually quit listening on my first and only non-fragmented listen to this album, where Kanye tries to justify the prices he charges for his merch on tour, which later on the album he calls his mission because he doesn't want to go on Dancing with the Stars, where he talks about how he thought the Book of Job was a job, where he brags about being the greatest artist alive, where he's referencing his Yeezys and complaining about the IRS over a gooey synth line. And while I could have so many words for the raging incoherent hypocrisy and calculation being pulled here by this greatest artist alive and a lot of his handlers, I'll simply refer to the Gospel of Matthew. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Number 19, Selah by Kanye West.
Sola, when I get to heaven's gates, I ain't gotta peek over.
Yeah, the drums and the gospel choir have swell off the organ, but dig even a little bit into what's being said here, and I got concerns. He cites Bible passages from John, but neglects the larger context that comes further in the discussion on the Mount of Olives. That just being of the seed of Abraham is not enough to ensure salvation, that good deeds must be done. And yet Kanye then equivocates himself with Noah as a prophet, seemingly not aware of the incest subtext that comes after the story of the Ark, calling back to Ye there, almost unintentionally, and then equivocating with Jesus, accepting that he has been betrayed and must magnanimously forgive them as they must forgive him and everyone else, when in reality, you can make the argument that by ignoring the later parts of Luke 10 that he references, he ignores the neighbor cast down in the story of the Good Samaritan. The humility and compassion for the least of one's brothers is what helps the most, not setting oneself above like the priest and the Levite did. Again, when you see the subtext as more focused on the provocation and profit of this religious pivot, it makes the bombast seem all the more shallow. And you want the last bit of proof on that? Number 17, Closed on Sunday by Kanye West.
Closed on Sunday. You my Chick-fil-A.
You know, I actually got some real backlash when I called this Kanye's Chick-fil-A praise song. After all, he's just using the meme for provocation. He doesn't know or really care that obvious brand promotion of a fast food joint whose founders donate to causes that say LGBTQ people deserve death and push similar punitive laws in Africa right now. He doesn't know, right? And while I could say that there tends to be progression between ironic memes and unironic belief in those spaces, and that the rest of the song is a screed against Instagram, protecting one's daughters, renouncing Jezebels in a pretty unfortunate but expected sex-negative move, and that people will think twice about stepping on his land now, which is kind of in line with the whole right-wing prosperity gospel nonsense that would unironically praise Chick-fil-A. So what is it here? An ironic meme that doesn't match with the song's downbeat, paranoid mood that would not feel all that removed from right-wing YouTube right now and doesn't match the sincerity of the entire project? Or is it unironic and a promotion of bigotry at a moment of sheer dumbassery? I don't know. How about you all decide? And finally, number 7, Follow God by Kanye West.
Push your buttons like type right. This is like a movie, but it's really very lifelike. Every single night, right?
And now we got the song where once again becomes abundantly clear that Kanye's gospel is really the gospel of Kanye. An unending scream of indignities that utterly miss the point of the religion that he wants to espouse. Where he rants about Instagram and at his father, where he points out that nothing here is very Christ-like, followed by the revealing line that nobody tells you when you are like Christ. That's kind of the point. You know, in fact, you all wanted a Bible passage, and I actually have one for you from the Gospel of Luke. 2 men went to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all my income." But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, "God, be merciful to me, the sinner." Truly I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. It's not about being seen, or holding forth, or bragging endlessly, but doing good deeds for the least of one's brothers for their own sake. And when you realize that within his Calabasas Kardashian bubble, Kanye will never hear or get that message, that's a sad tragedy of it all. That's why I didn't want to review the album in the first place. This is commodification of something that should never be sold. And that kind of leaves me in a messy situation for best and worst of the week. I mean, if I'm going for best, it's going to use this gospel, if only for Clipse and Kenny G, who are at least trying. There's some core there. Worst is a tie between Closed on Sundays and On God. They're both everything that makes me utterly revolted with this brand of organized religion and the evangelical prosperity gospel movement. I mean, let's hope next week it's all swept away, and let's hope Kanye finds some peace. Maybe humility, maybe that will help him for his own sake, because I kind of think he needs it. But hey, until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.